audience. I'm sure you guys have a lot of questions. This is something that affected a lot of us who are here. So we'll have the mic. We'll pass it around. If you have any questions, please raise your hand. Does anyone want to start?
Thanks a lot.
Please introduce yourself.
Thank you very much. My name is Zoni Woods, and I work on gender and climate change. And I've been interested this morning to hear almost nothing about women. And something that you said, Louis, earlier really struck me about data. And this is something that we really struggle with because often there's no data on women in disasters, or where there is, it's very poorly, and it's not a priority in terms of gathering data. So I guess the question is to both of you, how do you see us creating incentives so that we are better informed about the gendered aspects of climate change and how to address disasters, but also, sometimes we have to look for the data and not just assume that what data is available is the best available data and what we should be looking at. So looking beyond what is the lowest hanging fruit. And having worked both in philanthropy and as an activist, I also, as a donor, always saw my role as asking the questions where there were, perhaps not enough information about. So how do you see yourselves working more in the area of women and climate change?
Houstonians first. Go ahead.
Well, thank you for the question. I'll approach this from the data perspective, I guess. I think you're absolutely right. We need better data on all of these kinds of things, issues of gender, issues of the specific kinds of development that we see. There have been, I think, some advances in a lot of the mapping technology and other kinds of crowdsourced, localized sources of data generation are getting us there, where we have this really rich local data that can help us think about some of these issues. So I think that a consequence of these is going to be that we'll see these more sort of refined and specific levels of data. So I think it's coming, and I think that the use of the technology is incentivizing that. But I agree, we're not there yet. So sorry, I don't have a great sort of answer for you, but I think I'm hopeful about the future.
I don't have a great answer for you. I can just tell you what I saw in Sagay and Cadiz, for instance. Obviously, data is key, right? And you have pictures, but you also have anecdotal data. Mothers, who were there, while their husbands, in our culture, at least in Sagay and Cadiz, it was the fathers who were the fishermen and the farmers, but the mothers stayed home, and they were there. That they were an excellent source of data to say, here's what was happening. They were instant storytellers. So I cannot really address and respond to your question by way of how that's done, but in terms of how they worked during the Yolanda community, the whole event. They were there from start to finish. And many of those community organizers, were gender neutral, were women, who were there, where their fathers were out, repairing homes or repairing the roads. Yeah. So both maybe numerical and anecdotal data.
Thank you.
All right, thank you very much. We'll move on to the next question. Does anyone have the lady up there, all the way there? Can we get a mic to her, please? Microphone. All right, I'll go to you. You good? All right, there you go. Thank you.
Again, I'm Joey Cruz, a young government employee. And we all know that there are so many players and organizations involved in disaster relief and rehabilitation. Now, my question is, do you think there is a need for a stronger regulatory system to ensure the standards and weed out the bad ones from the good ones in these players?
Okay, regulatory standards. You know, sometimes when there is, again, I'm going to speak from our experience, when you have too many rules, it cramps what you're trying to do. I look at sincerity of intention, authenticity of the program, and at the end of the day, measurable outcomes. So I'm not sure if it's regulation that makes the difference. I think it's, again, a plan, a structure, a process, and being able to have ground partners who have the core competencies to run and make it happen. So I'm not a very big believer of more regulation. Yeah.
I'll actually agree with that. I think that, and it goes to the heart of what I was talking about. I think that regulation has its place. The idea that you are going to regulate these whole host of agencies, I think in some ways implies or assumes when you create a regulation that you have a certain outcome in mind that you want to see happen. And when you try and design regulation to design those outcomes, I think you, in my reading of things, increase the likelihood that you get these unintended consequences that I was talking about. So the design of perfect regulations is a tricky thing. It's necessary in some cases, but there's a cautionary tale there as well.
Do we have time for one more question? Unfortunately, we don't. I'm sorry about that. We're running behind on time. But please feel free to tweet them. I've volunteered you guys to respond to their tweets. Okay, thank you very much. But we're going to move on to our